It's your Locked On Flyers podcast for Wednesday, June 15th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is wondering, are the Edmonton Oilers a good trade partner for the Flyers this offseason?
They could be.
Your Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with the incredible Russ Cohen, who's on Twitter at Sportsology. Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. You can follow us on Twitter at Locked On Flyers. That's pretty easy. You'll keep up to date on all the Flyers news and our episodes. You can also email the show at lockedonflyers@gmail.com. We've got a mailbag episode coming up tomorrow, so get those questions in. On today's show, we are going to talk about the Edmonton Oilers with special guest Paul Almeida. And he's got a ton of information about where the Oilers are this offseason. So it's a great conversation, and we'll see what that means for the Flyers and their potential trade partners as well. Locked On Flyers is free and available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Odyssey, wherever you are listening right now. So hit that subscribe button. You'll get all of our episodes here on the Locked On Podcast Network, and we're over on YouTube. So drop us a like and subscribe over there as well. Russ, before we get into that conversation with Paul about the Oilers, a little bit of news that was so good to see. The Professional Hockey Writers Association honored both Al Morganti and Bill Clement with honors that will put them in the Hockey Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it's good. I'm a part of the association. I was happy to see it. It's funny, for all the games I cover, I almost never see Morganti because he's always down below, and maybe he comes up, walks through for like 2 minutes. And so I've never really conversed with him. I did converse with him in like a restaurant once and, talk hockey with him. And, he's very, is before I was in this business, and he's, very nice guy. So certainly a long career, and he's deserving. And Bill Clement, one of the best.
A legend, an absolute legend for Flyers fans. And I'm sure we'll have a lot more to say about it as the Hall of Fame ceremony approaches. But really, really thrilled for both these guys.
And I urge people to go look at the video when he did the ESPN broadcast where he stripped down. But that's what got him in trouble. No. That's what got him in trouble with ESPN. But he is a legend because of it.
He is. Wasn't going to bring that one up.
Yeah, you got to bring it up.
But good for both of them. All right. With that, here is our conversation about the Edmonton Oilers with Paul Almeida. Like we said at the top of the show, we are thrilled to welcome Paul Almeida from Azorcan.net, who also covers the Edmonton Oilers. And the Oilers are a really interesting study for a team right now, having just lost in the playoffs. So that still probably stings a little bit, but there are some potential opportunities there in terms of what the Flyers can do relative to the Oilers. But first off, Paul, how are the Oilers reacting to their sweep by the Avalanche?
Well, I think most people here are pretty much thrilled with how far the Oilers got in the playoffs. And basically it came down to the Avalanche right now are a much deeper and better team than the Edmonton Oilers. And when you factor in the injuries that the Edmonton Oilers had to probably 2 of 3 of their most important people, which is Leon Draisaitl, who I don't know how he kept playing with the injuries that he had. And the other one is Darnell Nurse, who we saw was a shadow of what he could be because of his hip flexor injury. You could see that he, was really making plays that he normally doesn't make. He wasn't physical as he normally would be. So when you take away your best defenseman and you have, mind you, Draisaitl didn't look too hampered by the injury in terms of his production, but you can see there were times where he was going off the ice and he was in a lot of pain and really laboring.
Yeah, let's talk about drafting and development for a minute, because they've had McDavid long enough that if their drafting was a little better and their development was a little better, they'd have a little more help and not be so worked up against close to the cap. What do you feel that's gone wrong there? Because like even someone like Benson, I felt like, wow, I mean, why isn't he playing for them yet?
Yeah. I don't know with Benson. I mean, his skating has always been a bit of an issue.
Mhm.
And he did get a bit of a push, but it just hasn't translated. As you know, there's quite a few players whose American Hockey League game just doesn't translate to the NHL game.
Yeah.
And for Benson, I think for him to be successful, he's got to be on one of the top two lines. And there just isn't room on the Oilers for him to be on the top two lines. If you have McDavid, you have Draisaitl. He's a left winger. Well, that's Hyman. And Nudra's playing left wing as well this year. Then you have Fogel, who was brought over from the Canes, was the third line left winger. So you have a situation where he's playing fourth line minutes. And really, he tried to change his game. He tried to be more of a pest. He tried to be more engaged physically, which really is not his game. But, he did it. And I give him credit. He did it well when he tried. But, when you're looking for your bottom six forwards to basically contribute on the penalty kill and maybe bring some physicality, that's just not something that he's going to be able to do.
And just to follow up with with Philip Broberg, at the time at the draft, I thought it
Yeah.
was a risky pick because he hadn't been a defenseman for that long. He's really not physical. He's very fast and he's got great stick work, great ability, but he's also not that good defensively. I think he's gotten a little better over the years, but like for him to be an NHL defenseman to really help this club, do you think he's close?
Well, I think he's on the roster next year. I'm, looking at, Bakersfield, I would say that there's three players down there, that being Stuart Skinner in goal,
Right.
Broberg on defense, and Holloway up forward at forward. I think
Yeah,
all
Holloway
three
will
of them-
play. Yeah.
I think all three of them are locks to be on the Oilers early next year. Now,
Okay.
the other side of it is the Edmonton Oilers also have Samorikov, who's a very good defenseman in Bakersfield. And they have Niemelainen, who came up and provided a bit of a physical presence. So we'll see how it shakes up. Automatically, you can't just give the spot to Broberg. But
No.
right now, I would say he has the inside track. And of course, if the Oilers are looking to, manage their cap, they need some players making, sub $1 million and young players pushing from below to take some of these spots because, as you know, once you have 4, 5, 6 players making north of $5, $6, $7, $8 million, you really need inexpensive additions that are gonna, be able to fill some roster spots and contribute.
So, given how positive people are feeling about the season and how they performed, do you think that management is going to be measured in their offseason moves or reactionary?
Oh, I think it's going to be a huge offseason for Ken Holland, but there are a lot of moving parts that could really change his, vision for what he can do this summer. Number one is what happens with Duncan Keith. And if he decides to retire, they've talked to him about that they need to know prior to July 1st what he's thinking in terms of whether he's going to play next season or not. I think they're fully prepared to have him on defense next season. But if he decides to retire, right away you have $5.5 million off the cap. Plus, a lot of that cap recapture goes back to the Chicago Blackhawks, and the
Right.
Oilers actually get an
Right.
additional $3.4 million in cap relief. So that's a swing of almost $9 million in cap space that the Oilers don't have right now. The other one, of course, is Mike Smith, who, what can I say about him? He's 40 years old. I think he gave the Oilers everything that he has. But I don't know if the Oilers can go into next season with Mike Smith as the number one goaltender.
No, and the fact that they gave him a 2-year contract, Paul, that was
Yeah.
nuts. That was nuts.
Yeah, they did, but I think that was to keep the cap number low. I think otherwise they would have paid him 3 or more because his numbers dictated that he was at that time number wise a top maybe 15 goaltender in the NHL. So to get him for $2 million, maybe they had to include that second year. And ultimately, if he decides to retire, they had a goaltender that was basically their starter and carried them through the playoffs for $2 million. And as you know, Mikko Koskinen, we knew a while back he signed with Lugano. But I have to say, when Smith was out for the majority of the year, and Koskinen was okay. He's not a starter, but
when
he
they
could be a
came
very
through-
good backup. He could
Yeah,
be a
when-
very good backup in the NHL. But he's made his money. He's 30 some years old. He's going back to Europe, close to his family. I can't begrudge the guy that, but I think in terms of Oilers fans here, I think they have nothing to say, but Koskinen did the best he could. He was not a number one goalie, but if somebody offers you or I the money, we're going to take it and do the best we can. And I think that's what happened with Koskinen. I don't think that he was ever a number one goaltender, even though, they signed the contract for him to be one.
Right. So two things on that. When Edmonton came through here in Philly, I stayed on the Edmonton side, and at that time, Koskinen had a little run going and kind of did keep the season going. So I get it. But on the other end, I think it's Ken Hitchcock that fell in love with Koskinen, thinking he was going to be this top goalie, and that was some bad scouting there.
Yeah, and well, the thing with Koskinen that we found over the years is that he's fine if you can rest him and play him every third night or something like that.
Yeah.
But, when you have a situation like when Smith was out for an extended period of time and you have to run him, 4 out of 5 nights, or 4 out of 7 nights, or 4 out of 6 nights, he'll give you 2 very good starts out of that. But then near the end, that's when the wheels fall off. And the problem for him was, the early goals in the game where, if you look at the stats for the Oilers were probably near the bottom of the league in terms of, not scoring a first goal. The other team scored the first goal the majority of the time against the Edmonton Oilers, which they've been playing catch up pretty much the majority of the games this season.
All right, we'll have more with Paul about the Oilers, including what the plan for Evander Kane is coming up next. But first, we're going to hear about our friends at Rock Auto.
This episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry? You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. Rock Auto prices are reliably low for every customer, from expert mechanics to beginner do-it-yourselfers. They have everything you could need: brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. Whatever you need for your car, you'll be able to find it and get your car in shape. Go to rockauto.com now and see the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com.
Before we get to our last segment on the Oilers and potential trades with the Flyers, we have an important favor to ask you. Locked On has put together a survey so we can learn more about our listeners, just like you, and make your favorite Locked On podcast, like Locked On Flyers, even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like and what you don't like about Locked On shows. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey right now to get started. It won't take very long, and everyone that completes a survey qualifies for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Ticketmaster gift cards. To take that survey, go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey, and thanks for your help. So I think the other big question that a lot of people out there have is, will they re-sign Evander Kane?
I think, again, that Duncan Keith situation probably plays a lot into it, because that would add a significant amount of cap space. The other part of it is, he's going to test free agency. And are there going to be a lot of teams willing to pay Evander Kane $6-7 million or more? I don't know. And for how many years? So I know that from everything he says and everything we've read and everything we've seen, that he enjoyed being here. He gets along with the leadership group very well. He's exactly the type of winger that Connor McDavid needed, which is a guy with a little bit of a physical presence. Against Calgary, not too many guys messed with McDavid because Kane was there. Tkachuk was totally absent during the Calgary Edmonton series, and I think that Evander Kane played a big part of that. And Evander Kane, he was on a 40-some goal pace playing with the Oilers for half a season. And then he added another 13 goals in the playoffs. Had the Oilers continued and gone on to the Stanley Cup final, he would be pushing, a Flyer, Reggie Leach, and an Oiler, Yari Curry, maybe for the goal scoring record in one playoff season. So there's a lot to like about Evander Kane. He was a good citizen while he was here. We didn't hear anything bad about the way he was treating his teammates or anything off ice related. So from that perspective, his new girlfriend had a baby here in Edmonton, and she was very happy moving up here. So I think there's a lot of things for Evander Kane to consider in terms of what is being offered and where he would like to be. I think it's all going to come down to what are other teams going to offer Evander Kane, and what situation are the Oilers in terms of being able to afford him under the cap?
Well, here's the bugaboo. I mean, it's easy for Kane to be on his best behavior for a half of season, especially with the situation that went on in San Jose, knowing that this is it. Like, if he screwed up in Edmonton, he wasn't getting another job. But
absolutely,
he did prove himself, which he usually does on the ice. Off ice is always another adventure. But he is probably not getting more than 2 years from teams on the outside market. He probably will get the 6 to 7 that you're talking about, but I don't think they're going to give him the term. And here's the problem. Ken Holland's been handing out term, like it's ice cream on a hot day. Is he going to fold on that too?
Well, I think it all comes down to what other teams are willing to do. I mean, if other teams are only willing to go 2 years, then you say, well, we're willing to match that. And I think that's what the Oilers are waiting for. And they're waiting to see, what shakes out. I mean, they have 3 RFA young players that they have to consider what they're going to pay those 3 to stay. And then, like I mentioned before, there's the Duncan Keith situation. And then the other situation is they need to find a goaltender. And that's not going to come cheap, right? So, there's different aspects of the roster that...
So since you said it, the goalie. So
yeah.
Are they going to be heavy into Jack Campbell? And are they looking at the John Gibson market now that at least there's a willingness on Gibson's part to be traded? We don't know if Verbeek's going to want to trade him, but...
Well, the other side of it is, we don't know if the Ducks would want to trade him within their division, number one. There's other there's other teams that need goaltenders. Toronto needs a goaltender, although they're in a worse cap space than the Edmonton Oilers right now.
Yeah.
The team in the Stanley Cup final, the Colorado Avalanche, are going to need a goaltender. They're going to have their own pressures cap-wise coming up. I mean, right now... What
if Darcy Kemper has like 4 shutouts in the Stanley Cup? Come on, Paul, give him a chance.
I know. Well, Kemper was the goalie that the Edmonton Oilers were in on as well when Colorado got him. So
it's a crazy goalie market. It really is.
It's a crazy goalie market. And then there's also Husso from St. Louis. There was a time this year where we thought Binnington would be the goalie that was going to be traded out of St. Louis. And, now you have Husso as a free agent. And where does he go? So the other side of it, too, is, there might be free agents out there, maybe not a goaltender, but maybe at other positions that look at the Edmonton Oilers now and say, okay, look at what Evander Kane did. Mm-hmm. And an agent might say, if my client goes there and has a good season, then maybe he's got a big bonanza the following year in terms of signing as a UFA. So we haven't heard of players that might be potential UFAs. They might come snooping around the Oilers saying, we'll sign for 1 year at a reasonable rate, knowing if I play with Connor McDavid and I score 40 goals, then I'm back into the $7-8 million range in my next contract. So, that's still to come.
Yeah, that's always the thing when you have a superstar like that, is that other players can kind of draft off them in terms of getting their stats up to earn the big paydays. But that's just part of the game. So, more power to them.
The Oilers don't just have one; they have 2. So
that's true.
You can say a lot of times a player can sign saying, "Oh yeah, I'm going to such and such a city to play with a big centerman," but it doesn't always work out that way. In Edmonton, you have 2 and maybe 3 if Nuge plays center as well, rather than playing the wing with Draisaitl.
Right.
So, signing. We have to say that Hyman has been the Oilers' best signing ever.
It was a costly one, but he's been worth it.
Costly, but when you consider $5 million, the length of the deal is costly. But I think when you look at it, I mean, you got to win now with McDavid and Draisaitl, and I think he'll give you 3-4 really good years off that contract, as will Nuge. And that's where you need those guys in that wheelhouse to win, and you have to show McDavid and Draisaitl that you're prepared to win. And I think the Oilers are all in with that. I think the first round draft pick this year is on the table. I think a young player like Bourgault that they drafted last year, who's played extremely well in the Quebec League, is on the table. I think some of the young defensemen that they have in Bakersfield are on the table. I would think that maybe the only two guys that would be Holloway and Broberg.
Right.
Right. So I think the other big question that people have been asking is that it seems like Jesse Puljujarvi and or Kyler Yamamoto are on their way out. And that's where I see maybe some potential for the Flyers here to work out a trade. But what is your reading of the tea leaves on those two?
Well, there's another player as well, and that's McLeod. McLeod in the playoffs played extremely well.
I like McLeod.
He's a centerman. He skates, he adds a lot of speed to that third line. He's pretty much claimed that third line spot, which again frees up Nuge to move up in the lineup as well. And I think he is top priority number one. If I was the general manager, would be him.
Yeah.
I like Jesse Puljujarvi. The tools are all there when you look at this guy. He's a big kid. He's strong. He's got decent skill. He can play with top players. He can play on your third line and be a decent third line player. I thought the third line of Foegele, Puljujarvi, and McLeod was very good in the playoffs.
It was good. No, it was good.
The difference with Kyler Yamamoto is I think Kyler Yamamoto's hockey IQ is higher than Puljujarvi's.
Yeah.
And players like McDavid and Draisaitl, I think, like playing with Kyler Yamamoto. Obviously, the big difference between Puljujarvi and Yamamoto is you can't make Puljujarvi 6'3", 210 pounds.
Right.
But the guy gives you everything you have. And again, that's where having a player like Evander Kane, you can have a player like Yamamoto in your top six if you have a player like Kane as well in your top six. And I think the Oilers in their bottom six, I would say, want to be faster and they want to be bigger. And if you look at the playoffs, to me, Jesse Puljujarvi he didn't have any impact whatsoever in the playoffs.
No.
And when you have a player that should be in your top six, or the analytics numbers say that he's a top six player, you expect him to have impact in the playoffs more than just breaking even when he's on the ice. And especially if you get an opportunity to play with McDavid or Draisaitl. And the big thing to me about Puljujarvi is he doesn't feature on the penalty kill. He doesn't feature on the power play. So how much do you pay a player who plays no special teams and doesn't score at a high rate? Can you afford to pay that player $3 million? I don't think so. Yeah. And, Kyler Yamamoto plays the power play. McLeod plays the power play. That was the second power play unit, was Evander Kane, McLeod, and Yamamoto throughout the whole play.
McLeod's got a nice shot, which I think is getting better as the years go on here. So.
And he's younger than Puljujarvi.
Yeah.
And I'm not, Puljujarvi's a very polarizing figure here in Edmonton, because you have the people that are all in on the stats community. They are 100% by Jesse Puljujarvi. They think he's one of the best players in the NHL. And, there are lots of aspects of Jesse Puljujarvi's game that I like. But there are some aspects of his game that I don't like. I think the play dies on his stick too often. I don't think he makes good plays with the puck, and I don't think he's a very good finisher.
All right, so here's the three-way trade that I could offer you.
Sure.
It will be the Flyers, the Oilers, and Carolina.
Okay.
So the Flyers send Konechny to the Oilers. The Oilers send Puljujarvi to Carolina because they both played together, and Net just goes to the Flyers.
Yeah, I don't think the Oilers could afford Konechny in their top six. The Oilers are looking for.
I think he's $5 and change. Yeah.
Yeah, the Oilers, if they're going to pay $5 and change to somebody, it's going to be Evander Kane. There's been talk as well that the Oilers might look to somebody like a Josh Anderson out of Montreal. The other guys.
Although he's making a fair amount now, he's probably a $4 and change.
He is, but the Oilers would have to move Tyson Barrie back the other way.
Or would they buy out Zach Kassian? That's the other thing they can do, right?
Well, they could buy out Zach Kassian, or again, you might be looking at including Zach Kassian with the Jesse Puljujarvi to get rid of his salary.
Yeah.
The other guy as well is Warren Foegele. At close to $3 million, he might be a guy that's sacrificed because you have Holloway and McLeod on the third line.
Right.
and Holloway's a left winger, right? So
Yeah.
if there's a situation, you have Hyman on the left wing, you have Nuge on the left wing, you could go with Holloway as your third line winger, and he only costs you 800 and some
I mean,
thousand
technically,
dollars.
Holloway at some point could play center. He's a really good center too.
Oh, for sure. But the Oilers are loaded with centers. You start
I know.
including
I know.
McDavid, Draisaitl, Nuge, McLeod,
Yeah.
which is fine because McLeod has played the wing as well with Draisaitl off and on last year with Yamamoto. I think the Oilers, what it comes down to with Jesse Puljujarvi is going to be what the agent's going to ask for a contract. Earlier in the year, people were saying, "Oh, we have to sign him long term at $3 to $4 million a year. He's a very valuable member." He had a very good start to the season. The first 15 games, he looked like he was a bona fide first line player, or first top 6 player. And then his stats just went in the tank. Now he had COVID, he had another injury, but I can't think of too many members of the Edmonton Oilers that didn't go through COVID.
Yeah. See, it sounds like you're cutting out the middleman here, Paul, and you're just going to call Carolina and say, why don't we just trade Puljujarvi for Netchus, and you'll save some money and you'll get a really skilled player, and they'll put the two Finns back together and everybody's happy.
Yeah, it could happen. It could happen. But
BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports information. You can find all the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's Stanley Cup Finals, basketball championship finals, Major League Baseball scores, and of course, all of the latest fighting news from MMA and UFC to boxing. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about all the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts.
I just don't know how the Oilers fit Jesse Puljujarvi in based on what they're looking at. And I think if they don't get Evander Kane signed, they're going to be looking for another top 6 forward in that mold. And like I say, Josh Anderson's the type of guy that fits that mold. And Montreal looks to be in a bit of a rebuilding mode. I don't know, pretty soon you might be hearing that guys out of Montreal are going to be moved along. We already know that Jeff Petrie has asked to be moved along. Right. So there's the fit. If Jeff Petrie leaves, they need a veteran defenseman back. And,
they need to eat some salary, though, for sure.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And Tyson Barrie at 4.5 is not too bad for a guy. It's a lot, but it's a guy that could run your power play. And I have to say that he was one of the Oilers' better defensemen in the playoffs. I think he was probably in their top 4 in terms of defensemen in the playoffs. Now, the thing for him being available is that Bouchard can take over the power play.
Right. And he's fully capable.
He's fully capable of doing that now. And that's the reason why the Oilers can make him expendable. I think if the Oilers bring him back, I think that would be fine as well. The other guy I think that Edmonton is very interested in signing is Kulak. I mean, he's a local kid. They got him from Montreal for a 2nd-round pick. And from everything we hear, he's open to the idea of staying. He's playing in front of friends.
Yeah, he's solid. He's solid, Kulak.
He was fantastic. And the other guy that was a huge pickup for Holland last year was Cody Ceci. He was fantastic.
I would be careful about Ceci. That's like getting, that sports car that is good right now, but if it breaks down, I mean, Ceci, his defense, it's going to be bad at times.
Yeah, but you know what? Paired up with Darnell Nurse during the season, it was a very good pairing. And, they complemented each other very well. And his playoff was fine. He was fine in the playoffs. So in terms of what the Oilers are paying him, something starting with a 3, I think he's fine. And, what they need is they need Bouchard to continue to grow as a defenseman and become a bona fide top 4 defenseman. If they can sign Kulak, we have to wait to see what happens with Duncan Keith. And we'll see what goes from there. I think the Oilers
My last thought for the Flyers is, since Ellis is still going to be up in the air, maybe we hear something in July, whatever, the Flyers could be interested in someone like Barrie too, because then that would be a match.
Yeah, I think the Oilers will be looking to move Barrie, but I don't think the Oilers are looking to give away Barrie.
No.
I think he has some value because he signed at a reasonable amount for a quarterback on your power play. And, he's proven he can play. He can't play 25, 26 minutes. No. But he can give you, anywhere between 17 and 18 minutes. If 4 of those minutes are on the power play, it's no problem for him if he has a decent partner, right? He skates very well. He moves the puck very well. And if you're looking for a guy that's going to get the puck up to your forwards very quickly, I mean, he's a guy that could definitely do that. And he can definitely quarterback a power play. There's no doubt about that.
He would be better than Keith Yandel was. I will say that.
Yeah, there was
agree with that 100%. Yeah,
there was definitely talk about Tyson Barrie when, previously for the Flyers in terms of an option to go after. And so I wouldn't be surprised if he was on the table again. I'm just curious if there's anybody on the Flyers that could be on the trading block that the Oilers might be interested in.
Well, Carter Hart would be number one if he's available.
Right. I'm saying on the table.
I think it all comes down to dollars. What can the Oilers afford to add to their team?
Yeah.
From the Flyers that is reasonable. I don't know if the Flyers would be interested in a player like Warren Fogle if the Oilers decide to move on him as well. But for the Oilers right now, it's all about they need players that are going to be part of the team to push this team forward to make a run over the next 3-4 years when you have McDavid and Draisaitl signed. I mean, it doesn't mean they won't sign an extension, but I think if you don't show that you're ready to win, there is
one other option for the Oilers. If the Flyers see that they're not coming to terms with Travis Sanheim, and Edmonton does, save the money from Keith, Sanheim would be a good guy for them to get because then they could sign him next year.
Yeah, I've liked Sanheim for a long time.
He's from that area. He's from out west. He's
Again, it comes down to the dollars, right? And a lot of it comes down to I always hate to go back to it. But it really comes down to three things for the Edmonton Oilers as to what they're able to do this summer. Number one, it comes down to what happens with Duncan Keith. That's number one. Number two, if Smith retires, that opens up $2 million in the goaltending position as well. If Smith even wants to, I think the Oilers have to move on from him anyway. Him retiring just is a clean break. Otherwise,
make him a goaltending coach. Just say, look, we like you, but
absolutely, they could sign him for a 5-year contract, making $250,000 a year as a goaltending coach or whatever, and say retire and whatever. Yeah. But he may still, knowing him, he still has that fire. But he went through a tough season with a lot of injuries, and as you get older, you don't want to do that too much any longer. So, but again, the Duncan Keith one is a big one, and Evander Kane is a big one. Yeah. Because if Evander Kane comes back, there's not a lot of room to do much else. And now, you look at if Gibson becomes available, obviously Gibson is going to control where he goes in terms of a trade. He's got limited no trade. And if Edmonton's not on the list, then they can talk to him. But, if you're the Anaheim Mighty Ducks, or we called them Mighty Ducks, geez, that's a throwback.
That's a throwback.
If you're the Anaheim Ducks, if it's a similar package between the Oilers and a team in the East, I think they'd rather move them to the East. If I'm Ken Holland, I'm calling the Ducks right away and saying, okay, we have a first-round draft pick this year, 29th albeit. We have Borgo. We have a young goaltender in Stuart Skinner that we can send back the other way if you like as well. And what do you need to make it happen? Because I think the Oilers, their window is now. It has to be now, and it has to be over the next 3-4 years. And I think any move that they make going forward has to be with that in mind. The years of, developing and futures and all that, I think other than bringing up players who can contribute at a lower cost from the minors that have proven that they can play, I don't think the Oilers are in a situation where they're going to be taking, flyers on players that, pardon the pun, using flyers.
Right.
Taking flyers on players that aren't proven at this point. I think they're looking for the Corey Perrys of the world and the Pat Maroons of the world on the third and fourth line that can contribute, but do it at a very low cost and spend their money on the top 6 or top 7 forwards, your top 3-4 defensemen, and your number 1 goaltender.
Well, that is a lot to digest.
Very comprehensive.
Assume that the Oilers are going to have a busy offseason. Who knows? Maybe there is room for some sort of deal between the Flyers and the Oilers to make this work on both sides. We'll see if Chuck Fletcher makes that phone call. But thank you so much for joining us, Paul. And where can people find you out there?
My company is azorcan.net, azorcan.net. We do a lot of European tours for hockey teams, soccer teams, old timers, World Junior tours. We had 325 people at the World Juniors in the Czech Republic. and we'll have probably close to 300 to 400 at the World Juniors in Sweden, not this winter, but the following one.
Nice.
And we have people from all across Canada and the United States that join us. So if somebody's interested in going to Europe with their local hockey team or with one of our groups to cheer on the United States as well as Canada at the World Juniors, they're more than welcome to join us.
Excellent. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Once again, thanks to Paul Almeida. What a fun conversation. I'm not sure that he thinks that the Flyers and Oilers are a good trading pair right now, but I think there's
door's
some
open.
possibilities. Yeah,
There is some possibility.
there is. So we'll see what Chuck Fletcher decides to do.
Exactly.
All right, that'll do it for today's show. We will be back again tomorrow with our mailbag. So once again, get those questions in. And we will be doing our weekly prospect profile on draft eligible prospect Julian Lutz. So that should be a good piece of information as we get closer to the draft as well. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. So send in those mailbag questions via Twitter at LockedOnFlyers, or you can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
You made us your first listen today. Now make your next listen Locked On NHL. Locked On NHL covers the playoffs like no other. You can hear the latest news and opinions from all our local experts every Monday through Friday. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Have a great day.